My husband secretly recorded me to prove I'm crazy. My husband didn't scream when I asked for a divorce. He didn't cry. He didn't even look upset. Instead, he pulled out his phone, hit record, and calmly said, "This is what I deal with." To the outside world, Daniel is a saint, a soft-spoken nonprofit director who everyone trusts. But that trust is exactly what he's using to destroy me. He's convinced our friends, his family, and even my own contacts that I'm mentally unstable, all while I was begging him to just let me go. I'm 49. My husband, Daniel, is 51. We've been married a little over 15 years. To anyone who doesn't live with him, Daniel comes off as calm, thoughtful, and level-headed. He's the kind of man people describe as measured. He runs a nonprofit, speaks softly, and always sounds like the most reasonable person in the room. People trust him immediately. I think that's part of the problem. What finally blew everything up wasn't cheating, money, or physical violence. It was control, and the way he wraps it in politeness so that I look unreasonable for objecting. A few weeks ago, I started getting congratulatory emails from people I barely know. At first, I thought it was a mistake. Then I opened one that said how excited they were to hear me speak at an upcoming fundraising panel. I had no idea what they were talking about. I scrolled back through my inbox and found a group email Daniel had sent out the night before. In it, he announced that I would be joining him on stage to share a personal perspective and called me his secret weapon. He wrote that I was thrilled to participate. I hadn't been asked. I hadn't agreed. I don't do public speaking. I never have. He knows this. I've turned down wedding toasts, retirement speeches, even casual presentations. My hands shake. My throat closes. It's not a quirk. It's a hard boundary. When I confronted him, he smiled like I was being cute. He told me I was overthinking it and that it would be good for me. I said no. Clearly. He sighed and told me the invitations were already out and it would look bad if I backed out now. When I said again that I wasn't doing it, he said, "Don't embarrass me. You're my wife. This is part of the job." That sentence didn't start a fight immediately. It just sat there, heavy and ugly. That night, I tried to explain why it hurt. I told him I felt like he'd erased my consent, and then dressed it up as support. He didn't raise his voice. He leaned back in his chair and started talking slowly, like he was choosing his words very carefully. He said he was worried about me. He said my anxiety had been getting worse lately, and that I sometimes imagined slights where none existed. He said he was pretty sure he'd mentioned the panel in passing and that maybe I'd forgotten. He said my reactions were disproportionate and that he didn't know how to communicate with me when I was like this. I told him to stop talking about me like I wasn't in the room. He didn't. He kept saying things like your perception and your emotional state. I told him he was being manipulative. He said I was being defensive. That's when I told him I wanted a divorce. He didn't explode. He didn't cry. His face went blank. He looked at me like I'd just said something mildly inconvenient. Then he said, "You destroy everything we've built over something this small?" I said it wasn't small. He said, "You always say that," like he was humoring a child. What followed wasn't screaming. It was worse. He started listing things. Every time he'd compromised. Every opportunity he'd given up for my comfort. Every time he'd smoothed things over with people because I'd been difficult. He told me I was reactive, dependent, and incapable of seeing the bigger picture. He told me that if I walked away now, everyone would see it for what it was. When I told him I was serious, he said, "No, you're not. You just want leverage." I went to bed shaking. Since then, he's been acting like the conversation never happened. He still talks about the panel. He still forwards me emails like nothing is wrong. When I bring it up, he sighs and asks if we're really doing this again. Meanwhile, other people have entered the situation without my permission. I started getting messages on WhatsApp asking if I was okay. Not because I'd said anything, but because Daniel had told people he was worried about me. He framed it as concern. He told one mutual contact that I'd been under a lot of stress lately and that he was trying to be patient. Someone messaged me on Instagram saying they hoped I was taking care of myself and linking me to an article about burnout. I snapped and replied that I was fine and that maybe they should mind their own business. They left me on read. Then Daniel posted something vague on Facebook about how hard it is to love someone who pushes you away when you're just trying to help. No names, no details, just enough. People commented about strength and compassion. One person wrote that he was a saint. I commented back asking him to stop talking about me publicly. He replied that if I felt attacked, that was something I needed to examine. That started an argument at home that finally involved yelling. I told him to stop narrating my life to other people. He yelled that I was trying to censor him. I yelled that he was turning me into a character so he could stay the hero. He yelled that I was ungrateful and cruel. I yelled that he hid behind calm language because he couldn't handle being challenged. He told me I was unstable. I told him he was smug and hollow. He told me no one would believe me if this went further. I told him he didn't get to decide that. His sister messaged me and told me I was tearing the family apart over nothing. I told her to stay out of my marriage. She told me I was abusive for speaking to her that way. A colleague of his sent me a Snapchat saying Daniel was handling everything with so much grace. I replied that grace wasn't the same thing as honesty and to leave me alone. Every time I push back, it gets reframed as proof that I'm the problem. Every time I stay quiet, it's used as evidence that he's right. He still talks about the future like it includes me. Update 1. Daniel never came back to the original argument. He didn't bring up the panel again directly. He didn't ask if I'd changed my mind. He didn't argue the divorce comment. Instead, he shifted sideways. Quietly, methodically. The first sign was how other people started talking to me. Someone I hadn't spoken to in months messaged me on WhatsApp asking if I was holding up okay. The wording fell off. When I asked what they meant, they backtracked and said Daniel had mentioned I'd been overwhelmed lately and they just wanted to check in. Another person sent me a long voice message about rest and self-care, saying Daniel was doing his best to support me through a rough patch. That was the phrase he used. Rough patch. I hadn't told anyone anything. Then I found out he'd emailed his board saying he might need some flexibility in the coming weeks due to family health concerns. Again, no details. Nothing I could point to and say, that's a lie. Just enough to set a narrative that something was wrong with me and he was bravely managing it. The power dynamic flipped fast. Suddenly, I was answering questions I never agreed to answer. I was being handled. At home, he acted patient. Painfully patient. Every time I tried to bring up how inappropriate this was, he'd tilt his head and ask why I was so agitated. He'd say things like, "You're spiraling again," or "This is exactly what I was worried about." He never raised his voice. I did. Before I tell you what happened in this story, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Drop a comment and tell us what you think about the story and how you would react. I want to hear your thoughts. And every time I did, he'd get this look on his face like he'd just been proven right. I finally snapped and confronted him directly. I told him to stop telling people I was unstable. He denied it without missing a beat, said he was just asking for understanding because marriage was complicated. I told him he was laying groundwork. He told me I was paranoid. I called him manipulative. He said I was proving his point. That was the first time he yelled. He accused me of sabotaging his work by being unpredictable and emotional. He said donors didn't like uncertainty. I yelled back that he was weaponizing his image to discredit me before I'd even spoken. He yelled that I didn't understand how fragile his reputation was. I yelled that he was hiding behind it like a shield. He told me I was unhinged. I told him he was calculating. That argument didn't end. It just paused. Later that night, after hours of silence, he followed me into another room while I was crying and held up his phone. He didn't say anything at first, just stood there recording. When I noticed and demanded he stop, he said very calmly, "This is what I deal with." I screamed at him to put the phone down. He told me to lower my voice if I didn't want to look irrational. I lost it. I yelled that he was a coward who needed an audience to feel important. I told him he was incapable of direct conflict, so he outsourced it to other people. I told him he curated concern like a brand. He yelled back that I was ungrateful, that he'd protected me for years, that no one would ever side with me if this went public. I yelled that he didn't get to decide my credibility. He yelled that I was burning bridges I'd need later. I yelled that I was already standing alone because of him. The next day, it spread. His sister Mara messaged me on Facebook telling me to get help instead of nuking a marriage. No greeting, no question, just an accusation. I replied that she should mind her own business and stop parroting things she didn't understand. She fired back that my hostility was exactly why Daniel was exhausted. I told her to stop diagnosing me through secondhand gossip. She said I was abusive for speaking to her that way and that she was worried about her brother's safety. That word stuck in my throat. Safety. Update 2. A few days after my last update, I found out by accident that Daniel had scheduled a private meeting with several people connected to his work and labeled it as a support conversation. I wasn't invited. My name wasn't on it, but my absence was the point. Someone forwarded me the calendar invite asking if I'd be joining. That was how I learned about it. I confronted him immediately. I didn't ease into it. I didn't ask questions. questions. I walked straight up to him and demanded to know why he was organizing conversations about me without me. He tried to keep his calm tone, but I could hear the irritation under it. He said it wasn't about me, it was about him needing support. I told him that was bullshit and that he knew exactly what he was doing. He said I was catastrophizing again. That word set me off. I yelled loudly. I told him he didn't get to medicalize my reactions after months of deliberately provoking them. I told him he had been laying social landmines so that if I ever spoke up, everyone would already be primed to dismiss me. He raised his voice back and accused me of threatening his livelihood. I yelled that he'd been threatening mine by erasing my agency and rewriting my character in public. This time, he didn't try to sound reasonable. He told me I was unstable, jealous of his success, and furious that I couldn't control him anymore. He said I had always needed someone else to anchor me, and now that I was flailing, I was trying to take him down with me. I called him a manipulative fraud who used concern as a leash. I told him he only felt powerful when other people were watching. He shouted that I was delusional and that everyone saw through me. Then he crossed a line he couldn't walk back. He told me that if I kept pushing, he would make sure people understood what they were dealing with. I didn't scream after that. I went very quiet, and that seemed to scare him more. I told him the marriage was over, not emotionally, logistically. I told him I was done engaging in private arguments he could later distort. I told him I would no longer play along with his version of events. He laughed and said I didn't have the influence to control the narrative. I told him I wasn't trying to control it anymore. That night, he posted again. This time not vague. Still no names, but sharper. He wrote about betrayal, instability, and being emotionally attacked behind closed doors. He framed himself as patient to the point of self-destruction. The comments rolled in fast. Something snapped cleanly in me. I didn't post a long explanation. I didn't dump screenshots. I didn't plead. I responded once, directly under his post. I didn't insult him. I didn't soften it either. I wrote that I had asked him repeatedly to stop discussing me publicly, that he had refused, and that from this point forward, any further commentary would be addressed formally. Then I logged out. That one comment detonated everything. My phone exploded with messages. Some people demanded explanations. Some accused me of cruelty. Some told me I was proving his point. I didn't argue with most of them. When someone insulted me directly, I snapped back. When someone told me to get help, I told them to stop diagnosing strangers online. When someone accused me of ruining a good man, I told them they had no idea who they were defending. The yelling wasn't just at home anymore. It was everywhere. Daniel came home furious. He screamed that I had humiliated him. I screamed that he had been humiliating me for weeks and finally didn't like the spotlight turning. He accused me of being calculated. I accused him of being exposed. He told me I was reckless. I told him he was a coward hiding behind tone and timing. We were both yelling, talking over each other, dragging every buried insult into the open. He told me I would regret this socially. I told him I already saw who was willing to believe whatever version he fed them. He told me I was burning bridges. I told him those bridges were built on silence anyway. The fight ended the way all our fights ended, with him trying to reassert control by talking slower, calmer, like he was the adult in the room. This time it didn't work. I didn't respond. I didn't argue. I packed what I needed and told him communication would go through third parties from now on. He kept talking while I packed insults, predictions, warnings I didn't answer. The fallout didn't stop overnight. Some people pulled away from me completely, some stopped messaging him, some asked uncomfortable questions he wasn't prepared for. The support conversation he scheduled happened without me, and it didn't land the way he expected. People noticed gaps, contradictions. The absence of specifics. I moved forward with the divorce process quietly. No announcements, no posts, no explanations. Daniel still tells his version. I still hear echoes of it. The difference now is that I'm not trapped inside it anymore. The end. Daniel is a smug, controlling prick who uses fake calm and concern to steamroll you, then plays victim when you finally say, fuck no. You said no to public speaking, a hard boundary he knew about. He signed you up anyway, lied that you were excited, then gaslit plus DRVO'd you into oblivion while recruiting his whole network to paint you as the unstable one. You tried talking, he recorded you crying to use as proof, posted vague victim shit online, and threatened your credibility. You finally called it quits, dropped one precise public comment, and left NTA. Not even a little. You escaped a masterclass in polite emotional abuse. Good fucking job. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Got a story to share? Drop in the comments and let us know which one was your favorite.